The morning after my fever broke, I sat at my small kitchen table with a cup of strong coffee and a notepad, carefully planning what I had decided to call my strategic withdrawal. The decision felt both terrifying and liberating, like standing at the edge of a diving board, knowing that once I jumped, there would be no going back. I had exactly 3 weeks before the children's next scheduled visit, which would give me enough time to execute my plan without seeming impulsive or reactive. The key was to make my disappearance seem natural rather than punitive, at least initially. I didn't want Miguel to immediately realize this was a deliberate action designed to teach him a lesson about taking family for granted. My first stop was to visit my sister Rosa, who lived in a retirement community in San Bernardino, about an hour east of Los Angeles. Rosa was 2 years older than me and had been widowed for nearly a decade. She had successfully raised 4 children who all remained actively involved in her life, calling regularly and visiting often. I had always admired how Rosa had managed to maintain close relationships with her adult children without becoming their unpaid servant. "Elena, you look terrible," Rosa said bluntly when she opened her door to find me standing in the hallway of her bright, cheerful apartment. "What's wrong?" Over the next 2 hours, I told Rosa everything. I described Miguel's gradual transformation from loving son to entitled user, the endless weekends of unpaid childcare, the way he dismissed my needs and took my availability for granted. Rosa listened without interrupting, occasionally shaking, her head in disapproval or making sympathetic clicking sounds with her tongue. "Mija, this has been going on for 3 years?" Rosa asked when I finished my story. "Why haven't you said anything to him directly?" "I've tried," I said, though even as the words left my mouth, I realized that wasn't entirely true. I had hinted, made subtle complaints, expressed fatigue, but I had never sat Miguel down and explicitly told him that our relationship had become unbalanced and harmful. He just brushes off my concerns and makes me feel guilty for not wanting to help my own grandchildren. Rosa nodded knowingly. "Your problem is that you've trained him to expect this behavior from you. You've never said no, never set boundaries, never demanded reciprocity. He thinks this is normal because you've made it normal." She was right, of course. In my eagerness to be the perfect grandmother and helpful mother, I had created a monster. Miguel genuinely didn't see anything wrong with our arrangement because I had never shown him that anything was wrong. "So what are you planning to do? Just disappear forever?" Rosa asked. "Not forever," I said, though truthfully I hadn't thought that far ahead. "I want to go somewhere for a few weeks, maybe a month. Somewhere Miguel can't reach me, can't guilt me into coming back before he's learned his lesson." Rosa was quiet for a long moment, staring out her window at the palm trees swaying in the desert breeze. Finally, she turned back to me with a mischievous smile that reminded me of our childhood together. "My friend Carmen, not your daughter-in-law, but my friend Carmen from the community center, has a sister who manages a small hotel in Puerto Vallarta. It's not fancy, but it's clean and affordable, and they often need help with English-speaking guests during the summer season. You could work there for a few weeks, earn a little money, and be completely unreachable unless you want to be reached." The idea was perfect. Mexico was far enough away that Miguel couldn't simply show up at my door, but close enough that I could return quickly if there was a genuine emergency. Working at the hotel would give me purpose and structure, preventing me from wallowing in guilt or second-guessing my decision. Over the next week, Rosa helped me make the arrangements. Her friend Carmen called her sister Lupita, who was indeed looking for temporary help during the busy summer season. Lupita offered me a small room behind the hotel office and meals in exchange for working the front desk 4 hours each morning and helping with laundry in the afternoons. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest and it was mine. Meanwhile, I began the delicate process of preparing for my disappearance. I arranged for my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, to collect my mail and water my plants. I told her I was visiting, Family, but kept the details vague. I prepaid my rent for 2 months and made sure all my bills were current. I even bought a cheap cell phone that Miguel didn't know about, one I could use for emergencies without being tracked. The hardest part was deciding what to tell Miguel. After much consideration, I chose to leave a note rather than having a conversation. That would inevitably turn into an argument or a guilt session. The note had to be carefully worded, apologetic enough that he wouldn't immediately become angry, but vague enough that he wouldn't know exactly where I had gone or when I planned to return. I wrote and rewrote the note a dozen times before settling on something that felt right. Dear Miguel, I need to take some time away to think about my life and what I want for my remaining years. I know this comes as a surprise, but I've been feeling overwhelmed lately and need some space to figure things out. Please don't worry about me. I'm safe and I'm staying with family. I'll contact you when I'm ready. I love you and the children. Mom. Wasn't entirely dishonest. Rosa was family, and I did need time to think about my life. But it was deliberately ambiguous about my location and my timeline for return. 2 days before my planned departure, Miguel called with his usual request. Mom, can you take the kids this weekend? Carmen's sister is getting married in Vegas, and we thought it would be nice to have a little getaway without the children. For a moment, I felt the familiar tug of obligation, the ingrained need to say yes and accommodate his request. But then, I thought about the small suitcase already packed and hidden in my bedroom closet, about the plane ticket tucked safely in my purse, about the new life waiting for me in Puerto Vallarta. I'm sorry, Miguel, but I can't this weekend, I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. There was a pause. What do you mean you can't? Are you sick again? No, I'm not sick. I just have other plans. What plans? His tone carried a note of disbelief, as if the idea of me having a social life outside of his children was inconceivable. Personal plans, I said firmly. You'll need to find other arrangements for the children. Mom, this is really short notice. Carmen's already bought her dress, and we've made hotel reservations. Can't you change your plans? What could be so important? And there it was, the assumption that nothing in my life could possibly be more important than his convenience. In that moment, any lingering doubts I had about my plan evaporated completely. I'm sorry, Miguel. I simply can't help you this time. You'll have to figure something else out. I hung up before he could argue further, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. I had never spoken to him that way before, had never prioritized my own needs over his requests. It felt strange and wonderful and terrifying all at once. The next morning, I took the bus to LAX and boarded a plane to Puerto Vallarta, leaving my old life behind like a snake shedding its skin. As the plane lifted off and Los Angeles grew smaller below me, I thought about Miguel discovering my note, probably sometime Sunday evening when he returned from Las Vegas, expecting to pick up his children from their usual weekend at Grandma's house. I wondered how long it would take him to realize that his reliable, always available mother was truly gone, and what he would do when he finally understood that actions have consequences, even within families. For the first time in years, I was about to find out who Elena Rodriguez was when she wasn't defined by other people's needs and expectations. Miguel found my note on Sunday evening, exactly as I had anticipated. By then, I was settled into my small but comfortable room behind the Hotel Marisol in Puerto Vallarta, having spent my first day learning the registration system and helping guests with dinner reservations. The work was simple but engaging, and I found myself genuinely enjoying the interactions with travelers from different countries who were all united in their desire to enjoy Mexico's beautiful coast. I learned about Miguel's discovery through Rosa, who called me on my secret phone Monday afternoon with barely contained amusement in her voice. Mija, your son has been calling everyone in the family trying to find you. He started with Maria in Phoenix, then called our cousin Roberto in Tucson, and even tracked down our Aunt Esperanza in San Antonio. He's convinced something terrible has happened to you, I felt a pang of guilt, hearing the genuine worry in Rosa's voice when she described Miguel's panic. Did you tell him I was safe? I told him you were fine and that you would contact him when you were ready, just like your note said. But Elena, he sounds really scared. Whatever lesson you're trying to teach him, I think he's starting to understand that something serious is happening. That evening, as I sat on the small balcony outside my room watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, I received my first direct contact from Miguel. He had somehow gotten my work number at the hotel, probably by calling every hotel in Puerto Vallarta, until he found one that confirmed they had an Elena Rodriguez working there. Mom? Thank God. I've been going crazy trying to find you. What are you doing in Mexico? Are you okay? Are you sick? Did someone hurt you? The questions tumbled out of him in a rush of obvious relief and confusion. I'm fine, Miguel. I told you. In my note that I needed some time away to think. But Mexico? Mom, you don't just disappear to another country without telling anyone. I thought you had been kidnapped or had some kind of mental breakdown. Do you have any idea how worried I've been? I found it interesting that his concern was entirely about his own worry rather than curiosity about why I might have felt the need to leave. I'm working at a hotel here, Miguel. I'm safe, I'm healthy, and I'm exactly where I need to be right now. Working? Mom, you're retired. Why are you working at some hotel in Mexico instead of being home where you belong? Where I belong. The phrase struck me as revealing. And where exactly is that, Miguel? At home, in Los Angeles? With your family? Speaking of which, what am I supposed to do with Sofia and Diego this weekend? Carmen and I had plans, and now you're not here to watch them. And there it was, less than 5 minutes into our conversation, and he was already focused on how my absence inconvenienced him. Not once had he asked how I was feeling, whether I was enjoying myself or what had prompted me to make such a dramatic change. His only concern was how my decision affected his weekend plans. I suppose you'll have to figure that out the same way other parents do when they don't have grandparents available to provide free childcare, I said calmly. Free childcare? Mom, you're their grandmother. It's not work when it's family. Isn't it? I asked. Miguel, when was the last time you called me just to see how I was doing? When was the last time you visited me without needing something? When was the last time you asked about my health, my interests, my life outside of taking care of your children? There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear him thinking, trying to remember instances that would prove me wrong. We talk all the time, Mom. We talk about Sofia and Diego. We talk about your work schedule and Carmen's work schedule and who needs to be picked up where and when. But we don't talk about me, Miguel. You don't know that I've been having trouble sleeping since your father died. You don't know that I've been thinking about taking art classes. You don't know that Mrs. Patterson from next door had surgery last month, and I've been worried about her. You don't know any of these things because you never ask. Another silence, longer this time. When Miguel spoke again, his voice was quieter, more uncertain. I didn't realize... I thought you liked spending time with the kids. I love Sofia and Diego, I said firmly. They're wonderful children, and I'm grateful to be their grandmother. But Miguel, I also have a life that exists beyond being your babysitter. I have needs and interests and dreams that don't revolve around your family schedule. So what are you saying? That you don't want to see your grandchildren anymore? The question revealed how little he understood about what was happening. In his mind, this was about rejecting his children, rather than demanding respect for myself. I'm saying that I want a relationship with all of you that's based on mutual care and consideration, not just on what I can provide for you. I care about you, Mom. You know that. Do you? Because caring about someone means being interested in their well-being, even when you don't need something from them. It means remembering their birthday without being reminded. It means calling, occasionally just to chat. It means asking how they're feeling and actually listening to the answer. I could hear Carmen's voice in the background, asking Miguel what was wrong, but I couldn't make out her words. Miguel covered the phone briefly, then came back on the line. "Look, Mom, I'm sorry if I haven't called enough. But this is extreme. Running away to Mexico? What if there had been an emergency? What if one of the kids got hurt and we needed you? Then you would have handled it the same way you'll handle it now, by being their parents," I said. "Miguel, for 3 years you've treated me like an unpaid employee rather than your mother. You've taken my availability for granted and made assumptions about my time that you would never make about anyone else in your life. That's not true, isn't it? Tell me, when was the last time you asked Carmen's mother to watch the children? For a weekend?" Another pause. "That's different. She lives farther away and she has her own activities. And I don't have my own activities. Or are my activities just less important than hers because I'm your mother instead of your wife's mother?" The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Miguel gradually shifting from defensiveness to something approaching understanding. He wasn't ready to fully acknowledge his behavior yet, but I could hear the wheels turning as he began to recognize patterns he had previously taken for granted. "So, when are you coming home?" he asked finally. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I'm enjoying my work here, and I'm learning things about myself that I forgot over the years. I'll come home when I'm ready." "But Mom, the kids miss you." Sophia keeps asking when Abuela is coming back. It was a low blow, using my love for the children to manipulate me into returning, but I had expected it. "Then maybe you should explain to them that sometimes people need time away to take care of themselves, and that loving someone means respecting their needs even when it's inconvenient." After I hung up, I sat on my balcony for a long time, listening to the gentle sounds of the ocean and the distant laughter from the hotel restaurant below. I felt sad, but also strangely proud of myself for having that conversation without backing down or apologizing for my decision. Over the next few days, Miguel called twice more, each conversation revealing a little more understanding of the situation. Rosa reported that he had been forced to hire a babysitter for the weekend, something that had apparently been both expensive and eye-opening for him and Carmen. "He told me that paying someone $60 for one evening made him realize how much money you've been saving them," Rosa said during one of our evening conversations. "I think he's starting to understand that your time has value, even if your family." It was a start, but I knew that real change would take time. Miguel had spent 3 years developing habits and expectations that wouldn't disappear overnight. The question was whether he would be willing to put in the effort to rebuild our relationship on more equal terms, or whether his pride would prevent him from acknowledging that he had been wrong. For now, I was content to wait and see, while discovering who Elena Rodriguez could be when she was valued for who she was rather than what she could provide. My name is Elena Rodriguez, and I'm 68 years old. I live in a small apartment in East Los Angeles, California, where the summer heat was beginning to settle over the city like a heavy blanket when I finally realized the painful truth about my relationship with my son. The late July air carried the familiar sounds of children playing in the courtyard below and the distant hum of traffic on the 101 freeway, but inside my cramped living room, all I could hear was the echo of my son's latest demand ringing in my ears. "Mom, I need you to watch the kids again this weekend. Carmen has that work conference in San Diego, and I have to cover an extra shift at the warehouse." Miguel's voice on the phone carried that familiar tone of expectation, as if my availability was simply a given, never a request, but always an assumption. I looked around my modest apartment, taking in the scattered toys that permanently littered my living room floor, the children's clothes that had somehow migrated from the laundry basket to every available chair, and the sticky fingerprints that decorated my coffee table like abstract art. For the past 3 years, since my daughter-in-law Carmen had returned to work full-time, my home had become an unofficial daycare center for their 2 young children, 8-year-old Sophia and 5-year-old Diego. "What about your mother-in-law? Doesn't Carmen's mom ever help with the children?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Miguel's mother-in-law lived in a beautiful house in Pasadena with Her husband enjoying their retirement by traveling and playing golf. She was conveniently too busy whenever childcare was needed. You know how she is, Mom. Besides, the kids love spending time with their abuela. You're so good with them. There it was, the guilt wrapped in false compliment that Miguel had perfected over the years. He knew exactly how to make me feel selfish for even questioning the arrangement. I closed my eyes and tried to remember the last time Miguel had called me just to see how I was doing. The last time he had visited without needing something from me. The silence stretched long enough to tell me everything I needed to know. Fine, I said, as I always did. Bring them over Friday evening. After hanging up, I sat in my favorite armchair, the only piece of furniture in the apartment that the children weren't allowed to touch, and really looked at my life for perhaps the first time in years. The walls were covered with pictures of Sofia and Diego, drawings they had made during their countless hours in my care, and school projects I had helped them complete. But there were no recent photos of Miguel and me together, no evidence of a relationship that existed beyond his need for free childcare. My weekly routine had become as predictable as clockwork. Monday through Wednesday, I would recover from the previous weekend's babysitting marathon, doing laundry, cleaning up toy, debris, and restocking my refrigerator with the specific snacks and meals the children preferred. Thursday, I would grocery shop and prepare for their arrival. Friday through Sunday, and often during school holidays and sick days, I was Grandma Elena, the full-time caregiver who asked for nothing in return except the occasional thank you that came less and less frequently. I thought about my late husband Carlos, who had died 4 years ago after a long battle with diabetes. In those final months, Miguel had been attentive and helpful, visiting regularly and offering support during the difficult days. But once Carlos was gone and the grief had settled into a manageable ache, Miguel's visits had taken on a different quality. They became transactional, brief stops to drop off or pick up the children, quick conversations focused entirely on logistics rather than connection. The irony wasn't lost on me that I had spent my entire life working to provide for Miguel and his sister Maria, who now lived in Phoenix with her own family. I had cleaned office buildings at night for 23 years while Carlos worked construction during the day. We had saved every penny we could to help Miguel through his apprenticeship program, had co-signed loans for his first car, and had given him the down payment for his house when Sofia was born. We had been good parents, sacrificing our own comfort to ensure our children had better opportunities than we had been given. Now Maria called once a month, usually on Sundays, to catch up and check on my well-being. She asked about my health, my friends, my activities. She remembered my birthday and sent thoughtful cards for holidays. But Miguel? Miguel called when he needed something, and what he needed was always the same thing: my time, my energy, and my complete availability. Guy. Breaking point came on a sweltering Tuesday in August. I had been battling a summer cold for several days, feeling achy and exhausted, when my phone rang at 7 in the morning. Mom, I know this is last minute, but Diego woke up with a fever and we can't take him to daycare. Carmen has that big presentation today that she can't miss, and I'm already on thin ice at work for calling in sick last month. Can you take him? I was still in my pajamas, my throat was scratchy, and I had been planning to spend the day resting and maybe seeing my doctor if I didn't feel better. Miguel, I'm not feeling well myself. Maybe Carmen's mother could help just this once. Come on, Mom. It's just for today. You know kids. He'll probably feel better by this afternoon. You can both just take it easy. Before I could protest further, Miguel was at my door with Diego in tow. The little boy was clearly miserable, with flushed cheeks and glassy eyes, clinging to his father and whimpering softly. Miguel handed me a bag with some children's medicine and Diego's favorite blanket. I'll pick him up as soon as I get off work. You're a lifesaver, Mom. He kissed my cheek quickly and was gone before I could say another word. That day, as I cared for a sick child while fighting my own illness, something fundamental shifted inside me. Diego needed constant attention, comfort, and monitoring. I gave him medicine, made him soup, held him while he napped fitfully, and worried about his fever throughout the day. By evening, when Miguel finally arrived to collect his son, I was completely drained. "Thanks, Mom. You're the best. Diego, say bye to Abuela." Miguel was already heading toward the door, clearly eager to get home to his own comfortable bed. "How is he feeling?" I asked, concerned about the little boy who had been so listless all day. "Oh, he'll be fine. Kids bounce back fast." Carmen picked up some medicine on her way home. Miguel paused at the door, seeming to notice my pale complexion for the first time. "You look tired, Mom. You should get some rest." And then he was gone, leaving me alone with the realization that in Miguel's mind, my well-being was secondary to his convenience. I wasn't his mother in these moments. I was simply a resource to be utilized when needed. That night, as I lay in bed with a fever that had worsened throughout the day, I made a decision that would change everything. I was tired of being taken for granted, tired of having my needs dismissed, tired of being valued only for what I could provide rather than who I was. I was 68 years old, and I deserved better than to be treated like an unpaid employee. In my own son's life, the plan that began forming in my mind was simple but radical. I would disappear, not dramatically or vindictively, but quietly and completely. I would show Miguel what life looked like when his reliable, always available mother was no longer there to solve his problems. I would force him to confront the reality of what he had lost by taking me for granted for so long. As I drifted off to sleep, despite my fever and congestion, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: anticipation. For the first time in a very long time, I was going to do something entirely for myself. 6 weeks into my stay in Puerto Vallarta, I had fallen into a rhythm that felt more natural and fulfilling than anything I had experienced in years. My mornings at the hotel front desk had taught me basic computer skills I never thought I would need, and my conversations with international guests had improved my English and given me fascinating glimpses into lives lived very differently from my own. In the afternoons, when the laundry work was finished, I often walked along the beach or sat in the town square, reading books I had borrowed from the hotel's small library, or simply watching the world go by. For the first time in my adult life, my time was my own. I ate when I was hungry, slept when I was tired, and made decisions based on my own needs and desires rather than someone else's schedule. It was intoxicating and a little frightening to realize how much of myself I had lost in the process of always being available to others. Miguel called every few days now, and our conversations had gradually evolved from his initial panic and anger to something approaching genuine communication. He told me about Sophia's piano recital, about Diego's first successful attempt at riding a bicycle without training wheels, about the challenges he and Carmen were facing as they juggled work schedules without their reliable backup childcare. More. Importantly, he had begun asking me questions about my own life. He wanted to know about the hotel, about the guests I met, about what I did with my free time. The questions seemed awkward at first, as if he was learning a new language, but they became more natural as the weeks passed. "Mom, I've been thinking about what you said," Miguel told me during a call in late August. "About how I only called when I needed something. You were right. I didn't realize I was doing it. But you were right." "I'm glad you can see that," I said, surprised by how much his acknowledgement meant to me. "Carmen and I have been talking a lot about how we took advantage of you. We got so used to having you available that we forgot to think about what you might want or need." He paused, and I could hear the genuine regret in his voice. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm really sorry." The apology was more meaningful because it had taken him weeks to reach it. This wasn't a quick fix offered to bring me home immediately, but a real recognition of how our relationship had become imbalanced. "I appreciate that, Miguel. But sorry isn't enough if nothing changes." "I know. That's why Carmen and I have been working on a plan. We want to show you that things will be different when you come home." Over the next 2 weeks, Miguel outlined the changes he and Carmen had made. They had found a regular babysitter for date nights and special occasions. They had arranged for Sofia and Diego to spend occasional weekends with Carmen's parents, distributing the childcare responsibilities more evenly among the grandparents. Most importantly, they had committed to treating any time I spent with the children as a gift rather than an obligation. "We also want to start having family dinners once a month," Miguel said. "Not because we need childcare, but because we want to spend time with you. And Mom, I want to learn more about what you're interested in, what you want to do with your retirement." The changes sounded promising, but I had learned to be cautious about promises made in moments of crisis. "That all sounds good, Miguel, but I need to know that these aren't just temporary changes you're making to get me to come home." "They're not temporary, Mom. Having to manage without you these past weeks has shown me how much I was asking of you and how little I was giving back. I don't want to go back to the way things were." In September, Rosa drove down to Puerto Vallarta to visit me, ostensibly for a vacation, but really to help me decide whether I was ready to return home. We spent 3 days talking through everything that had happened, evaluating whether Miguel's apparent transformation was genuine and lasting. "He seems different when he calls," Rosa observed, as we sat at a beachside cafe sharing fish tacos and cold beer. "More humble, I guess. Like he finally understands that you're a person with your own life, not just an extension of his family." "I hope so," I said. "But I'm scared that once I go back, everything will gradually return to the way it was before." "Then don't let it," Rosa said firmly. "You've learned how to set boundaries here. You've remembered who you are when you're not defined by other people's needs. Take that knowledge home with you." The following week, I told Lupita that I would be leaving at the end of September. She was sorry to see me go, but understood that I needed to return to my family. "You've changed since you arrived," she told me as we worked together in the hotel laundry room one last time. "You stand taller now, speak with more confidence. Whatever was troubling you when you came here, I think you've worked through it." She was right. I felt like a different person than the exhausted, taken-for-granted woman who had fled Los Angeles 2 months earlier. I had rediscovered my independence, my worth, and my right to make decisions based on my own needs rather than everyone else's expectations. Miguel and the children met me at LAX when my plane arrived. Sofia and Diego launched themselves at me, with enthusiastic hugs, chattering excitedly about everything I had missed during my absence. But it was Miguel's embrace that surprised me most, longer and more heartfelt than any hug he had given me in years. "I missed you, Mom," he said quietly, "not just for babysitting. I missed talking to you, having you in my life." Over the following months, Miguel proved that his transformation was genuine. Our relationship developed into something it had never been before, a friendship between 2 adults who happened to be mother and son. He called regularly just to chat, invited me to family activities that didn't involve childcare, and showed genuine interest in my own pursuits when I decided to enroll in the art classes I had been thinking about for years. I still spent time with Sofia and Diego, but it was time freely given rather than automatically expected. Miguel and Carmen always asked rather than assumed, and they made sure I knew how much they appreciated my help. More importantly, they had created a support system that didn't depend entirely on my availability. 6 months after my return, as I sat in my apartment working on a watercolor painting of the Puerto Vallarta sunset I had watched so many evenings, Miguel called with news that made me smile. "Mom, Carmen's pregnant again. We wanted you to be the first to know." His voice was full of excitement and joy. "And Mom, we want you to know that we're not expecting you to be our automatic childcare solution. We've learned how to manage, and we want this new baby to grow up knowing their abuela as a grandmother, not as an unpaid nanny." As I hung up the phone, I realized that my disappearance had accomplished something I never could have achieved through direct confrontation or gentle hints. Sometimes people need to experience loss before they can truly appreciate what they have. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to remove yourself from an unhealthy situation and force others to confront the consequences of their behavior. I was still Miguel's mother, and I always would be. But now I was also Elena Rodriguez, a woman with her own interests, her own value, and her own life. And that made all the difference in the world.